Welcome to the David Pakman Show. My name is Brittany Page, host of The Page Perspective here on YouTube, and I am your guest host today. I want to shout out David and his team for inviting me back, and I'm looking forward to covering the day's headlines with you all, so let's get into it. We are now fewer than 70 days away from the election here in the US, and in some states, early voting is actually less than 1 month away. We're seeing an increasingly desperate Donald Trump, who seems completely incapable of running an effective campaign against the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz ticket. He's so desperate, in fact, that he's returning to his usual sources of comfort, his go-to sources for mollycoddling, where he will be handled with kid gloves and asked absolutely nothing of substance. And yes, I'm talking about Dr. Phil. And listen, as a licensed marriage and family therapist myself, Dr. Phil gives us therapists a bad name. And I'm ashamed that he seems to be, at least for some, the public representative of what a therapist is. Even though he's not a licensed therapist, hasn't been licensed since like 2006. Now his primary job seems to be propping up the worst among us, including Donald Trump. This new interview he conducted with Trump is truly embarrassing. Softballs left and right, handing him talking points, trying to make him look as good as possible. But we know by now that no one can save Donald Trump from himself. So let's go through some highlights. I listened to the entire hour-long interview, so you don't have to. And I want to start with Donald Trump's continued proclamation that God protected him. God saved him from the attempt on his life because, well, God is very concerned about crime in America.
How do you answer that? Why were you spared?
So there had to be some great power, because you just can't say millions to one. I used to say 1,000,000 to 1. It's much more than that, because, again, you have to pull down the sign. There has to be a reason to go right, and I never go right. There's no reason. And not only go right, it's for about 1/8 of a second. It's not just right. It's out of all the time that we're on this planet, it's 1/8 of a second, right? So I shouldn't be with you. So
is there a purpose?
Well,
is there a reason you think you were spared?
I mean, the only thing I can think is that God loves our country and he thinks we're going to bring our country back. He wants to bring it back. It's so bad right now what's happening. When you look at the crime, the horrible things that are happening inside our country, and it can be solved. It can be solved fairly quickly. It has to be God. I mean, how can you say it's luck when it's, 20 million to 1, okay? I mean, it's just not possible that I was in that position. It's the only position where that bullet could have missed.
And you believe in God?
I do.
You believe God's hand was in this that day?
I believe so, yeah, I do.
And you talk about the country. You believe you have more to do. You weren't done. You were spared for a reason.
Well, God believes that, I guess.
Well, God believes that, I guess. Don't you love listening to Donald Trump speak for God? Many people believe that he does, by the way. He says, God loves our country. He wants to bring it back. When you look at the crime, it could be solved quickly. It has to be the hand of God protecting Trump. In other words, according to Donald Trump, there is no other way that God can interfere regarding these concerns that he has about the United States of America and crime rates other than ensuring Donald Trump wins the election. You know that Anne Lamott quote? The one that goes, you can safely assume you've created God in your own image when it turns out that God hates all the same people you do. I guess we can apply that here as well. When you've created God in your own image, you claim to speak for him and use his image to prop up your failing campaign for president. And what I love about this line of reasoning in particular is that later in the interview, he takes a critical tone toward President Biden based on comments Biden made when he was considering whether or not to step down. And he said, only the Lord Almighty could convince him to drop out. Watch Trump on this.
I won the election against Biden. I was up by 17 or 18 points after the debate. And they said, you know what, he's going to lose. They went and told him he's going to lose and we're going to change you out. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. In fact, he said, only God will change me. But so who knows what happened there?
Who knows what happened there, he says, doubting that Biden, I guess, would receive a message from God about whether to continue his presidential campaign while he sits there and tells the world that God's hand is protecting and guiding him because he's the only one who can save America. The grift is so strong with this one. Now, listen, it's one thing, I think, to talk about God intervening to save you. Okay, many people cope with tragic events by looking for ways to make sense of those events. And sometimes they turn to explanations like this, right? That God intervened because there is a larger meaning, a larger purpose. But it's quite another thing to do what Trump did next, which is make a claim about the electoral outcome and what it would be if Jesus was the one counting ballots.
For instance, I look at California. I gave a speech. I had a crowd so big. I said, "There's no way I could lose California," but automatically they mark it down if you're a Republican as a loss. That you lose by 5 million votes. I said, 5 million votes. I guarantee, if Jesus came down and was the vote counter, I would win California. Okay.
Okay. All he needs is Jesus to come down and count those votes, and he's winning California, you guys. In other words, he's not going to win California, you guys. Apparently, Jesus hasn't been counting votes in California since like 1988, since that's the last time the state voted Republican for president. But all of this is scary because of the growing population of Christian nationalists who have been radicalized, who truly believe that Donald Trump is being guided by the hand of God, and that he truly is the only one who can save this country. And there is just so much here that illustrates he isn't someone we should put in a position of power ever again. There were moments during this interview where I think Dr. Phil started to try to inject some humanity into the discussion, particularly related to the assassination attempt, by inviting Trump to stop focusing on himself when 2 people were seriously injured and 1 person lost their life. But even when given the direct opportunity to show his humanity and focus on the impact that this event had on others, he couldn't do it. There was even a moment when Dr. Phil tried desperately to drain even an ounce of humanity out of this selfish buffoon by asking him a simple question about how the attempt on his life has changed him, even going so far as to kind of tee him up with suggestions that he could simply repeat about how it has changed him. And Donald Trump couldn't do it.
Has this changed you? Has it changed your appreciation for life? Has it changed anything about you? Did you hug your kids extra hard? I mean, has it changed you?
A lot of people ask me, and a lot of people say, like, have you developed any fear of, doing this? Like, because being president is a dangerous job. It's much more dangerous than a race car driver or than anything. It's probably the most dangerous profession if you think about it. Just go up and down the list. So you have 46 and numerous left early or got hit. It's a very dangerous job. I never realized how dangerous, but I was at the border yesterday, and they were a dangerous place. He allowed it. He and her allowed it to become dangerous. It's a very, very dangerous place. I was doing an interview, and Secret Service said, "Sir, please, no more standing up." They don't want me to stand up. People, especially with the kind of weapons they have today, people have shots, and. But it's a great job. It's an interesting job. You can do so much good, but it's a dangerous job.
He cannot, even for a moment, display a shred of humanity. He has to immediately pivot to how he's not afraid, quietly asserting what he wants us to believe is strength, and then an artful pivot immediately to the border. But not an answer, by the way. Not even a repeating of the answer that Dr. Phil tried to offer up for him about hugging his kids extra hard. And when we look at who to elect to high office, policy is important. It's crucial. We want to elect people who have the right ideas, who will push us forward, who will make changes we want to see. And the kinds of people we elect is also important when it comes to character. People who can admit when they are wrong, update their views when the evidence changes or when their understanding of the evidence changes. People who have humility, who surround themselves with people who make them better and stronger. People who can admit vulnerability and show vulnerability. But Donald Trump, he's a stack of disqualifying character defects in a trench coat. He has absolutely zero of the characteristics that we want to see in a leader. And I guess we can thank Dr. Phil for illustrating this to us yet again.
One of our sponsors today is Zippix Nicotine Toothpicks. Zippix brings you a convenient alternative to smoking and vaping and the vape clouds, the ashtrays, the thing in your lip that people can see. I've seen that around. This is an easier and less messy way to curb the cravings, and you can use Zippix just about anywhere. Zippix is available in 6 flavors with 2 or 3 milligram strength. The nicotine and the flavor are long-lasting, and Zippix has helped countless people kick the bad habits, and they are bad habits. Zippix toothpicks are FDA registered. Their customer service is second to none. It is one of the most cost-effective alternatives. Also, check out their B12 and caffeine toothpicks. See for yourself why so many people have switched to Zippix toothpicks. You can only get Zippix online. Go to zippixtoothpicks.com today. Save 10% with the code PACMAN10 at checkout. Just remember, you must be 21 or older to order. The link is down below.